So if you'll all join me, please. Excuse me, we're not all ready. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Council, as usual, our first order of business is approval of the agenda. So if, oh, how about a roll call? No, sorry.
Council members, can you hear me okay? Okay. Council members, Judith Chandler. Present. Julie Wolf. Natalie Johnson. Here. Nancy Fortune. Present. Michelle Weatherholt. Here. Mayor Pro Tem John Chada is absent at roll call, and Eric John Graham.
Present. And tonight we're joined by one of Jeff Parker's associates. So if you could introduce yourself, please. Oh,
Good evening. I'm Katie Vera. I'm from Jeff Parker's office. Like you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, Hoffman, Parker, Wilson, and Carberry.
okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, maybe it
Carson. Magic of technology. Okay, so we have a motion. The motion is to approve the agenda with the exception of consent calendar, remove items 1 and 3 from the consent calendar. Okay, seconded by Natalie. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hands, please. Aye. Okay, motion passes 6. Okay, so now we'll go to public comment on non-agenda items. If there's anyone in the audience who wants to speak to a non-agenda item. Judy, did we have any? Okay, all right, apparently not. Let's go ahead then, and we'll move on to the consent calendar. So remaining on the consent calendar, we have item F2, approval of city council special session minutes, June 14th, 2022. And the fourth item, presentation of warrants written for May 2022. I would entertain a motion to accept and approve. Motion. I'm sorry. Yeah, so we're as the consent calendar, just 2 and 4. Second, okay. All in favor, say aye. I'm sorry. Look at, well, no, that's okay. It's more commonly we approve the agenda and then we get to the consent calendar. We handle it separately, but we did it as a joint motion. It seems relatively like a minor point. So what we're voting on now is to approve the consent calendar, items 2 and 4. Items 1 and 3 will be discussed separately right after, assuming we approve the consent calendar. Any other questions? Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor of approving the consent calendar, include items only 2 and 4. Say aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, so we have the second item, which will be from the consent calendar. We'll discuss that. Approval of the first item, approval of city council regular meeting minutes, June 7, 2022. Judith, you had concerns, so.
I just had one correction. It was, I can't bring it up at the moment, but it was under consent calendar, the first paragraph. It says Wickers, and that should be Becker's Lane. Was it? Correspondence. Oh, I'm sorry, council correspondence. I apologize. I'm trying to bring that up right. That was my only correction.
And so, Mayor,
Yes.
that was a correction that was brought to my attention prior to the meeting. I did make that correction administratively.
And
So,
I actually had one thing as well on that. And under I2, on the resolution number 1022, resolution updating the fee schedule with changes to parking institutions and micro motion, but I'm not sure if the language changes, some of the others were included or not.
We could take that and look at it, listen to the meeting and bring them back.
That'd be
For
great. Thank you.
okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so that item will be entertained at a future date. The next item, F3, Hiawatha Gardens partial demolition final change order. Judith? Or Denise, did you want to?
Could we move that to later? And the reason is I'm getting a text from Ann Nichols. I did not realize she was the one that could explain this. I did not review this agenda. I was out last week, so this agenda was reviewed and all the items were uploaded. And so my understanding is Ann Nichols is coming and she can explain the details. I do not have that information. So if we could move this to later on the agenda, I just asked if she could come up here. I don't think pulling over in Zoom, we can't see her or any of that. It may be very challenging. So if that would be okay with council to move this to later on the agenda.
Okay, if council has no objections, then we'd entertain item F4, or excuse me, item F3, when Ann Nichols is here to explain it to us. Objections? Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Okay, she's on her way, so let's go ahead and push on then.
One comment.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that everyone got my email that I wasn't able to send until this afternoon, but it did outline some of the issues that I had with F3.
Okay,
So just if you got, okay, so just I did send an email out in advance. So thank you.
no,
Just
I,
wanna Make sure. that-
no, thank you. And yeah, I had some concerns about that too. When I saw your email, I figured, okay, well, you'll bring it up. Good. Okay, let's go on. Item G1, proclamation number 1422, Parks and Recreation Month. And we'll hear from our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board liaison, Michelle.
City of Manitou Springs proclamation number 1422, proclamation designation of July as Park and Recreation Month. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Manitou Springs. Parks and recreation are vitally important and whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community, and whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas the City of Manitou Springs recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore, we, the mayor, exemplary dedication to the community they represent. Adopted this 28th day of June, 2022 in the city of Manitou Springs, El Paso County, Colorado.
Thank you. And we have our Parks and Rec Director here tonight, Skylar Beck. Skylar, again, on behalf of the city council and the people of Manitou Springs, we express our appreciation to you and ask that you pass it on to your staff, okay? Would any member of council like to make a remark about this? Okay, great. Thank you, Skylar. Next item. First reading of ordinance number 1722, an ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, amending chapter 6.34 of the Manitou Springs Municipal Code concerning restrictions of open fires and open burning to include city-owned properties, parks, and open spaces. And we are joined by Fire Chief John Forsett. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. I think you should all be very versed on this particular ordinance. Been here, this will be the third time through this, I'm guessing. The changes that we're looking at this evening were actually recommendations from Jeff Parker and so fitting and in alignment with all of our partners in the region as well. They include the properties more defined. In addition to that, your note that I received today regarding section 634030 regulations, E1, that sentence should end in an or. So I want to make sure that correction is known for you. On section 6.34.030 regulations, section E1, portable fire extinguisher, at least a 5-pound type, A rating, semicolon, or should be in order.
Yeah. John said that.
So that was brought to my attention today for correction. The language that's been added to the ordinance that you folks just went through last month is found in 6.34.060 prohibited activities, stage 1 fire restrictions, and also in 6.34.070 prohibited activities, stage 2 fire ban. In both of those sections, number 2, in the first sentence, we have the addition of including without limitation on city-owned or controlled property, parks, and open spaces except within 15 feet of city-approved disposal receptacles at city-approved locations. That sentence is the amendment in both of those.
Thank you. Council, do you have questions for the chief or comments? Judith?
Yes, here we go again on this one. I only have one question, and it came up in the OSAC meeting last night because this was on their agenda. Their questions were, one, how will it be enforced? And what would be the fines? Would they be consistent with all of the other fines for
They are.
violating?
The violations are described in 6.34080, which I can't tell you what that looks like as far as what would fines be and things like that.
Those would be the same for the open space. And how would that be enforced on trails and open space?
It's very difficult, like any of these are very difficult. I'm going to be honest with you. You've seen my letter in the past when it comes to the fire department's position, but mostly education on our perspective. However, that being said, first of all, seeing people smoking and then enforcing that, that's a police department matter. The police department's charged with the criminal activity of that act. So how they would do that, whether they would operate through a complaint process, which is difficult, obviously, the he said, she said thing, or personal observation. And then it would be much easier for them. It's difficult. All these things are very difficult to enforce.
And I brought it to you just because that wasn't asked from OSAC last night. And
I get it. I get it.
Thank you.
Julie?
this is an unrelated question, but are you going to be staying later for the meeting? Because I have a fire safety question unrelated to this ordinance. Will you be here for the duration of the
Is
meeting
there
or were
something in
you?
the agenda about fire safety? that
No,
I'm
I
missing?
was going to come up during council correspondence, but I didn't know if you were planning on staying.
It wasn't my intention. But if I have to, is there
I-
anything we can talk about now, or do we have to stay on this subject with this?
I don't think there's anything we could talk about now. I can't imagine that would be allowed.
I think we need to stick to
Alright.
this agenda item. Let me, in the interest of time and efficiency for everybody, Julie, does this regard the house at 325 Spring Street?
to know if there's a safety, if you can recommend something we should do so that doesn't burn down tonight.
Okay, it's my understanding that the firemen had spent a fair amount of time investigating the situation and that they do feel that the area is defensible. I really don't
So-
want to get into that.
So can if I can just,
Sorry, is this? a current agenda
No,
item?
it really isn't. So we probably should get off of it. Yeah, but yeah, okay.
Are there exceptions, attorney? Are there exceptions for emergencies? This is a fire emergency question.
Yeah, I understand that. If you want to talk about it as a, other business, if you want to do that would be.
Okay, well, maybe we could call you on the phone so you don't have to sit for the whole
Yeah.
darn thing. I don't know.
It, So if we get back to the ordinance at hand here, any other questions for Fire Chief Judith again?
I would just like to move that we pass on first reading ordinance number 1722, an ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, amending chapter 6.34 of the Manitou Springs Municipal Code concerning restrictions of open fires and open burning to include city-owned properties, parks, and open spaces.
Okay, second. And just for my clarification, does that include the modification of adding the or after that paragraph?
Thank you, Mayor, and
E1.
adding or on, it was
E1.
E1
Okay,
after the semicolon, adding the word or.
yeah,
Thank you.
that was section.
6.34.030.
Okay. Right, so we have a motion and I'll ask the seconder supports that. Okay, so any further discussion? Okay, I think we're ready to vote. So the motion is to pass the motion as presented with the addition of the word or in that spot that we have identified. So all in favor, say aye. Okay, great. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Chief. Okay. I see Ann Nichols has joined us. And if you're ready to answer some hard questions, we had this on the consent calendar, but we pulled it off, so. And if you'd come forward. So, all right, so next we'll entertain, this is item F3, Hiawatha Gardens partial demolition final change order. Denise?
I just wanted. is this on?
Mayor, I did not forward Judith's questions to
Oh.
Ann because I did not know that Ann was going to be here. I did forward them to
Oh.
Dole and Roy. So I don't know, you probably need to read those questions so that she's aware
Yeah.
of what you're going
Well,
to.
I'm sorry,
The
maybe
concerns.
be appropriate to give Ann a few minutes to look this over and we can move on to the next agenda items. Ann, would you be agreeable to that?
Sure.
So I'd give you a
That'd be
chance to look. Do you have in front of you what you need to review?
No, I don't. I mean, I have what you guys have, the packet, but I don't have your questions.
I think that.
Okay,
I think
well
it'd be
then, okay then,
Okay, well,
Let's-
let's
let's-
just see what I can do.
let's see how far we get, okay?
You definitely have the third team here.
Okay. Okay,
So
Judith,
first of all, I'm sorry, it's going to take me just a moment to get to where I need to be because we're in the D2 demo and dirt. Pardon me? I want to pull up the exact place just so, I'm looking at the D2 demo and dirt invoices.
Right.
And I'm on page 4 of 15 in our, in that packet. And my first question was, there's an item called lost time, and it says to be evaluated. Could you explain to me what that is and it's hard for me to consider this a final change order when there's a couple places where there's space fillers where there aren't dollar signs.
Right, and I probably couldn't explain that. I mean, I think there's no dollar amount there, so my guess is it's zero. And my understanding is these are final, that D2 was paid quite some time ago, and that the intent of this item is to get the agreement with Pikes Peak Regional Transportation Authority, PPRTA, so that we can be reimbursed. That's my understanding of
So-
what this is.
So there's not going to be another charge item later that's to be evaluated.
That is my understanding, that this is final.
Well, I added up all of the numbers in this contract and you were only off by $1 on this item. It should be 4561. Moving on.
That's very close. actually.
Yeah, it is close. Exhibit A5. I want to approach that and let's see, 3. I'm just trying to be real fiscally responsible.
Change order 5.
It would be Exhibit A5,
Oh,
change
Exhibit A5.
order 7,
Okay. let me
and it
get
is
there.
on page, I think, 8 and 9 in our packet.
Got it. Yes.
I wasn't sure about those crossed out numbers, but I did add up all of those figures and I came up with 29,404, not 504. I did add those up 5 times. So I just want to point that out to you. And then on Exhibit A7 is my biggest concern, is I added up all of those figures. You have a subtotal of 12,600 at 15% O and P. I came up with 11,800 when I added that up. So at a 15% O and P of 1,770, that would bring that total to 13,570. So that's off by $920. So we're looking at a little over $1,000. I just want to point that out because I'm getting more diligent at really going through and doing a fine tooth comb on these contracts. And I want to make sure that we are paying what we're supposed to be paying. So those were my questions. I had one more that you had a T&M on it, and I wasn't sure if time and materials was just another space filler that it should be a 0.
If
Can't remember what.
Yeah,
page
if
it was
there's no
on.
number there, they
Um,
certainly have.
It just said T&M, and I'm sure, I'm assuming that's time and materials, and there was no
Yes.
dollar figure next. to it. So those were my questions that I wanted to make sure that those figures were clarified and we were paying D2 demo and dirt
Good.
appropriately.
And it sounds like Dole has those questions, so I'm sure he'll respond.
He does.
I'm not capable of responding,
And
sorry.
it's okay. Those were my only questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
I was on time at City Hall. You'll be happy to know.
Okay, so with that, is it council's intent to go ahead and approve this, or do we want to wait for further discussion from Dole? Further explanation. Okay. I don't think we're in a big pinch. I think as Ann said, my understanding is that we're just seeking reimbursement from PPRTA. The vendor's been paid, so we're not causing a whole lot of hardship. So if there's no objections, we'll ask Dole to explain this. He's on vacation this week, I think, so. Okay, so maybe 2 weeks from now. All right. All right, let's see where we are. Okay, next item, first reading of ordinance number 1822, an ordinance amending the 2022 budget for fiscal year 2022. And we're joined by our finance director, Becca Davis. Becca, you have the floor.
Good evening. Is this working? Okay. It's hard to tell. Oh, so this amended budget is to implement the decisions made by City Council at the June 12th budget retreat, and also to correct the parking enterprise fund by adding the shuttle cost of $68,000 to it that was left off at the first budget amendment. Other than that, the numbers really aren't changed. So this ends the forecasted 2022 budget with a fund balance of $3,063,354, which is on target with what City Council had decided at that budget retreat. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Becca. Questions from council? I think we are pretty familiar with this, given our day-long retreat on the 12th. So if there are no questions, I'd entertain a motion.
It's on, guys. It's just
Okay.
I'm not having a lot of.
Okay. I move to approve ordinance number 1822, an ordinance amending the annual budget for fiscal year 2022 on first reading, and set a public hearing for July 9th at 6 PM or as soon thereafter as matter may be heard. July 19th. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Becca. Okay, wait quickly. The next item, item 3, local liquor licensing authority review and determination of a liquor sales room application for South Park Distilling LLC to be located at 16 Ruxton Avenue. And we'll hear from Judy Morgan, who's not on our city clerk, but also our liquor licensing specialist. And Judy, if you could explain the nuance on this, I think it's a little different than what we've done the last couple of times when we've heard liquor license issues.
This is a very different process than a normal liquor license. So this is licensed through the state, but the local licensing authority, which is council, is tasked with making a determination of whether they object to it or do not object to it. If you do object to it, it necessitates the details on why you object. And so then that goes to the state, but the state ultimately is the permitting authority in this. So that's how it's different. So this is for a sales room located up on 16 Ruxton Avenue. They are requesting on-premise consumption, so there'll be tastings, and off-premise consumption, which will be sales of their distilled alcohol. So the things that you need to consider on your determination, which is what you'll be providing to the state, is will the sales room impact traffic, noise, or any other neighborhood concerns in a manner that is inconsistent with local regulations or ordinances? And if there are problems, will the applicant sufficiently be able to mitigate any impacts identified by you, the local liquor licensing authority? And you would also need to consider if this would result in violations of the Colorado Liquor Code or the laws of the local government. And third, would it violate local zoning laws? So part of the process, this applicant came in. She did apply for a business license. During that process, it was identified by the planning department that this will require a minor development plan. And so that will be part of what's required in order to move forward with a business license. Let's see. So the way a sales room works is there's certain entities that can have a sales room. In this case, it's a wholesaler of distilled alcohol. And so they are allowed to have a sales room. It's their opportunity to have a retail location to sell their alcohol. They also can have tastings if they're requesting that as well. And that application for that goes directly to the state licensing authority, which is our Department of Revenue Liquor Enforcement Division. And an application, the applicant must also send a copy of the application to the sales room, for the sales room, also to the local licensing authority. In this case, I did not get a completed application from the applicant and was told that because it's going through the state, she wasn't planning on providing that to me. I did get the completed application from the state. So I was on the phone with the state. They provided me with that application. So I just wanted to let the council know that that came through the state. Let's see. So in this case, this sort of an application, a permit, doesn't require a public hearing. But, council, like I said before, is required to come up with a determination whether to object or not object to it. We have 45 days from the time it was submitted to respond. If for some reason the council doesn't respond, provide a response, the state assumes they move forward with it as if there's no objection. And that's about all I have on that. I did late this afternoon, I did get an email from the applicant, and she was requesting that her email be included in tonight's meeting. She was originally, she stated she was going to be here, but then this email indicates she isn't. I'll go ahead and pass that out to council.
Thank you. Yeah, Judy, if you would read that into the record, I think that would be good.
Okay, so the applicant's name is Megan or Megan, I'm not sure how she pronounced it, Sebastian. She says, "Dear City Council of Manitou Springs, please forgive my not being at the meeting in person. I find myself physically incapacitated by the thought of public speaking. Thank you to Judy Morgan for getting this on the agenda. Thank you to the Chamber for reaching out and getting signage put together. And thank you so much to all of the local business owners who've made it a point to wish me well here in Manitou Springs. I have owned South Park Distilling LLC for 5 years. I operated a sales room in Fairplay, Colorado for 2 years before COVID-19. The main purpose of a sales room is to offer South Park Distilling LLC product for sale to the general public. To that end, South Park Distilling LLC will offer bottles of whiskey, vodka, and gin for sale, as well as a variety of 12-ounce cocktails. Packaged snacks will also be offered, no food. Two main tenets of South Park Distilling are incredible guest service and responsible alcohol service. The sales room hours are 11 to 7 during restaurant service in town, and there will be a 2-drink per person limit on cocktails. South Park Distilling is a very dedicated partner of the local community. 10% of South Park Distilling LLC net profit goes to charity. Our 3 main charities are the local food bank, Boys and Girls Club, and local schools. I have been coming to Manitou Springs since I was a quote or parentheses poor college student, peering at the menus in the windows of the delectable restaurants, filling up my water bottle with the amazing local water and just soaking up that indescribable Manitou Springs vibe. What an honor to join the business community here. I am grateful to Manitou Springs. Thank you. Any questions can be directed to Colorado Department of Revenue Liquor Enforcement Division.
Thank you, Judy. Council, so we have 3 sets of criteria here that we would base our decision on. I think Judy went over that pretty well. It's included in our packets. So I'll open this to discussion. Julie?
I have a question. It sounds like it's a blend between a liquor store that would be selling liquor and a bar where you consume the liquor there. So is this still, does that mean that this business is considered a permitted use under our planning code? Or does it require a conditional use permit?
So my understanding is, like I said, they are the wholesaler, they create the alcohol. They have the opportunity through the state to have a retail store to sell just their alcohol. So they would not be able to sell any other brands besides their own. So I understand you're asking me about a planning question. My understanding is it's a retail use, and that minor development plan takes it from the previous use, which was an art gallery, to something like this, which is like a retail sales for alcohol. In this case, it would also have the tasting. It is kind of an unusual type of permit. So to answer your question directly, I don't know if I can answer that as far as
It's more of a legal question.
the
I think.
planning part of
Because,
it.
and it sounds like maybe from listening to your answer, maybe the issue is that you don't need a conditional use permit if you're going through the, whatever it's called, development.
Yeah.
What you call it?
Minor
Minor
development plan.
plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know?
City staff included an email regarding this. It's from Chelsea Stromberg, and she said, it's my interpretation that this business would require a minor development plan prior to the issuance of the business license. A minor development plan is required because this is a non-residential change of use without significant impacts, which falls under minor developments in the definitions section of Manitou Springs zoning code. She goes on to say the subject property was previously an art gallery, to my understanding, so I think this could reasonably consider a change of use without significant impact. And she also makes reference to the section in the code where this would be, the other process is defined.
So when we have a minor development plan, that means we don't have to do a conditional use permit under our code. That's my question. I don't know the answer. I mean, I'm guessing the answer is yes, because nobody brought it up, but I always thought we had to get a CUP first, but
That's correct. I don't know if Denise wants to add to that or speak to that.
Yeah, that's correct. And they have to go through the business licensure program. So this just allows the liquor, but then that doesn't mean that they can operate yet. We have to go through the entire business licensure program, which then goes through finance and planning, and they have to sign off before they can open their doors.
okay, so they don't need a CUP.
No.
Okay, that's all I
Okay.
need to know.
Okay, great, thank you. Do we have any other questions for Judy? Sure, Judith.
So this is, I've never had anything as unique as this come forward, and I understand that we are being tasked with asking ourselves, would this impact traffic noise or other neighborhood concerns in a manner that is inconsistent with local regulations or ordinances? I understand the distribution aspect of this business. I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around the tasting part of this. I've been to tastings of wine, and it usually is maybe an ounce or two. And I see in the packet that this is up to 12 ounces, and they are limited to 24 ounces of alcoholic beverage. To me, that's not a tasting. That's consuming alcohol, and which very well could contribute to traffic noise and other neighborhood concerns. And I'm just wondering, having never gone through this before, this is more of a question. What constitutes tasting? Is there typically an amount that's usually considered that would be different from having to have a liquor license?
There is, yeah, so I'm looking for it. I know it's in, I did print that part of the state statute off. It has to do with, a certain, I think, I'm looking, but it has to do with, how much and how many. I think the limit is 4 drinks, and I want to say it's like an ounce.
Yeah, I think
of the
Judith,
alcohol.
yeah, I think Judith, what they're saying is they can sell a pre-mixed drink that's packaged. They can sell 2 of those as part of the distribution. It's not you can't drink that drink there, but you can purchase a fully mixed drink.
And that was the part that was confusing to me. The language, it wasn't really clear to me whether they were purchasing it and taking it, or if they could be consuming no more than that quantity. So I just want that clarification made.
There are definitely rules about how much they can do for tastings. And it also requires seller server training for whoever's doing that. But there are definitely limitations on how much they can provide as in a tasting setting. They can pre-mix a drink, but have it, I mean, it's very laid out in state law. The city, I mean, on a city level, we don't necessarily get into that part of it because it's really the state that's allowing them to do that sort of it's a sale, it's a way to sell, it provides them the sales to sell the retail alcohol.
So who's the overseer of the business then? Is it the state that oversees it?
Sure, yeah, I have a couple points of clarification if it's helpful to council. So under the code, tastings means the sampling of malt, vinous, or spirituous liquors that may occur on the premises by adult patrons. I don't find in that regulation how tasting is defined by any sort of like ounces or anything like that. But there's another part of the regulations that says that tastings shall not exceed a total of 5 hours in duration per day. And then tastings only during the operating hours is permitted to sell alcohol beverages and in no case earlier than 11 a.m. or later than 9 p.m. And then I think that you were kind of alluding to some enforcement. So enforcement is done by the state. If there are any concerns by the Liquor Licensing Authority of any violations, that can definitely be brought to the state's attention. Otherwise, if there is an option to cite the business under the municipal code or for a violation of a condition of their business license, that can also be done locally.
And I do know they did provide a premise control plan to the state, and they did lay out in that. I believe they put something in there that how many drinks they were. Only one cocktail per person will be sold to take to a table. A 2-drink limit per guest will be enforced by the employee at the built-in bar. And then they talk about visibly intoxicated guests who enter will not be served alcohol, but will be given water and a free snack. That's part of their control plan.
And I apologize for all these questions. It would have been great to have that in the packet. I think that would have. I didn't.
The control plan was. in
Okay,
there,
yeah, I didn't catch that
Yeah.
part. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Sure.
Have other questions for Judy? Julie?
So when they, if this gets approved, then when it goes through the minor development process through the planning department, does the minor development process include an evaluation of parking and traffic concerns? Because I see that's one of the things we're supposed to decide today, but if that's going to be decided by planning, I'm fine not asking any questions about it, if that's part of their evaluation later.
I'm not sure the answer to that.
Yeah, I would imagine it's a matter of our code. I just don't remember from my planning department days if the minor development process requires an overview of parking and whether we have to look at waivers and all of that.
Well, and I hate to jump into the planning side of things. I mean, I did kind of ask some questions of planning and they did sort of indicate that that is all still part of that downtown area. And so there's a lot of foot traffic, probably more so than people driving to a location to go to that one business. But that how
Do you-
that plays into this, I'm not sure.
Do you know, the city attorney, do you know if our planning code requires a parking assessment as part of our minor development plan in our ordinances?
Not off the top of my head, I'm looking at it.
Just, there is a provision in the lease on parking as well.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, that's fine. I'm not interested in the lease. I'm interested in whether Manitou code requires the business to show that they're going to have sufficient parking and how they're going to do that. And sometimes planning department requires their employees to purchase a parking space in the lots and all of this stuff there's all this stuff about parking and businesses in the planning code. So it doesn't matter to me if there's something in the lease. I'm just trying to figure out legally if that comes up to be assessed as part of the minor development plan. If not, it sounds like that's something we have to address now as one of the 3 standards for the state approval.
So that is assessed as part of the minor development plan, and that's under code section 1824.020 J, which also includes other aspects of the plan, landscaping, lighting, drainage, and that. But yes, parking is assessed under section J of that. And then just one other note, for this specific application, I would just, compare it generally to a similar business that's going to be in that area. are there going to be any effects to the neighborhood or impacts on traffic, noise, or any other?
So you're telling me that those issues, traffic, noise, parking, that's part of the minor development plan. So we don't necessarily have to go through all of that analysis tonight. We can just kick it over to them, right?
I'd say that's up to you.
As an
If
option.
right now, if you feel like it presents any unique issues, you can certainly address that now. But it does look like they will look into at least the parking as part of that.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you so much.
See somebody who wanted to make a comment. Nancy.
Okay. I thought the hours of operations are 11 to 7, and I thought you said that in the code that the hours were less, only 5 or something. Did I read that wrong, or did I hear you wrong?
So under.
Oh,
Under state liquor regulations, they can only conduct tastings for 5 hours of those operating hours, which the maximum is 11 to 9. And then I think they said their hours are 11 to 7. Mhm.
And and in the premise control plan, I do still share a concern about the only 1 cocktail per person will be sold to take to the table. That's and a 2 drink limit per guest. It does sound like it crosses over into being a bar in that regard. So I don't know if we were to support it tonight or not object to it tonight, if the premise control plan could be still worked on to make sure it's in accordance with.
Well, I would say under, as part of the application, it does talk about mitigating, having the applicant willing to mitigate some, if you find something to be out of order, something that isn't as you would like to see it, that you would be able to mitigate it. So I'm not sure how that works. It's kind of an unusual situation.
Yeah, and I just say to that point that any legality, the tastings, the hours, how much alcohol is allowed, that's really being conducted by the state. If what they have in their application is not consistent with state law, then that really is separate from what is being looked at tonight.
I'm sorry.
So are we doing this backwards? It seems to me, so in other words, we could tell the state that it looks fine to us as to these 3 criteria. But then later, when planning department goes through their minor development process, they could theoretically nix it because of non-compliance or a problem with that, or once the state approves it. Is that the end? Does that somehow prevent the city's planning department from going through their process?
So my understanding is that's part of the business license, which is separate again from the issue tonight. And the process is pretty quick, right? You only have 45 days from the time that the application was submitted to consider these issues. So tonight really is the opportunity to look at those criteria and see if there's some reason to object to it.
And just a reminder as well, there is, as part of the considerations, to look at if it violates Colorado Liquor Code or laws of the local government. So it's not just the traffic and the.
But that's my
noise.
problem.
I know.
Because we're saying, we're if we approve it today, we're telling the state that we approve it. And then in a month, when planning looks at it, they could say, oh, well, you're not complying with the minor development plan code. And they can say, well, we don't want to. We've already been approved by the state. So that's where I'm having this confusion. Or maybe the attorney's answer, and maybe I misunderstood it, is, oh, no, the state can approve it, but you can still prevent the business from going forward if they fail to comply with the minor development plan ordinance. I don't know which one it is.
I guess this becomes a legal question. Is it possible to approve this on the contingency that planning will approve the minor development?
Well, so really it's not an approval or disapproval, right? It's an objection or not an objection. The business license is separate. If there were some issues, then they would not be able to operate without the business license. And yeah, I agree. There's a lot to consider tonight. I think that you can also still provide feedback to the state about the license and about any concerns you have.
So we're not going to have like some kind of it's too late, like a race judicata kind of thing where, oh, you told the state that traffic concerns were fine when you approved it tonight. So you can't raise any traffic concerns when it comes to the minor development plan. We wouldn't be stopped from raising those issues in the minor development plan, correct?
That would be separate because of the business license.
Okay. Then I'm worrying about nothing. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Anything from other?
So Counselor Wolf did a lot better job of asking the questions I was trying to get answered. Thank you. Why are we doing this before the planning? Can we as a council say we are not willing to approve this until it has gone through planning?
We have 45 days from the time the application is presented to us to respond. Otherwise, the state will assume that there's no objection.
And when does it go to planning?
It's the planning process is what I was told for this particular type of process is around 60 days.
So if we don't comment, the state is going to assume that everything's fine? Is that how that works?
Correct. If we don't comment within those 45 days.
So if we comment tonight that we are not ready, then what happens? If I was to say, no, I don't feel comfortable, then what?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Julie.
I'm sorry, Judith, this is what I understood the attorney to say, even though we were talking a little bit of lingo. If we say, yeah, no objection, no traffic concerns, no noise concerns, no otherwise concerns, and they're like, okay, cool. Well, if it's, then it's fine with, but then in 60 days or whenever, when the planning department gets into the nitty gritty of the minor development plan, they have the right to say, wait a minute, you didn't comply with the minor development plan. So even if it was okay with the state, it's not okay with us. You got to do X, Y, and Z first. So that's my understanding of what the attorney said. Did I do that right?
Yes.
In lay terms.
Go ahead, Nancy.
So that being said, I think getting a business in there would be great. And I would like to move that we do not object to this application.
Michelle? Do we have
I am very excited. I have not been to her place in Fairplay. I've seen it. And as everybody was discussing this, I was thinking about how often I go to downtown Colorado Springs because we don't have anything like this here in Manitou Springs. And regardless of traffic or whatever, we're going to have traffic problems, whatever comes into our town. So I'm not concerned about that. I mean, we have parking and all the things, and everybody is capable of walking, the shuttles, all the things. So I am definitely for this. And I move that we go ahead and.
So we have seconded by Michelle. So we have the motion by Nancy and second by Michelle. Okay.
Certainly.
Yeah, let's. Just to go.
I move that, well, the action is,
Just read from there.
I move that we not object to the Colorado liquor sales room application for a permanent sales and tasting room.
Second, okay, so we have the motion, second, we have restated the motion. Any further discussion or need for clarification? If not, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Thank you, Judy. That was interesting. I think that was this. Yeah, it'd be easier to be a bootlegger. Okay, so the next item is H4, consent to install public art on the avenue. Phase 1 visiting works. And we have Becca Sickbert and Ralph Rutten. Welcome.
Thank you. We're glad to be here. So as you read in the packet, our purpose here tonight is to seek consent from council on these recommended temporary art installations that are a part of the 2022 Art on the Avenue Sesquicentennial Edition. I will draw your attention to the fact that we did receive match funding. And we also recently learned, as you read in the packet, that this program has been in existence since 1997. That also makes this year our 25th anniversary. As part of this, we also wanted to share more information. So thank you. The last time we were speaking with you, you had some suggestions, and I had a wonderful email correspondence with some of you asking more questions about who we are and how we work. And so we're also hoping to share some more information on those topics with you. So in the presentation, the next slide details our board of directors. And so you'll see both all of those directors who sit on our board, including our chair, Ralph Roughton. So I may turn this over to him to ask any questions about how that was pulled together as part of our internal merger process. You'll also see with the tiny asterisks is who serves on the Public Art Committee. So there is a huge distinction between how we approach temporary art installations in the city versus how we approach permanent art installations. These visiting works, as we noted, are those that have already been vetted quite often by other arts organizations in the region. And so that sits with just us and our volunteer time. When we look at larger public art installations like those that you may have seen in the public art survey with Spirit of Manitou Springs, those are often put in front of a larger jury that does not represent our board of directors. What we're hoping to do there is engage with local artists, business owners, and a wider selection of people who also represent BIPOC and other less represented points of view. And so those particular panelists are not who is in charge of this particular set of recommendations. Ralph, did you want to address our bylaws?
No, I think
Okay.
we're here for this.
Okay, so then as a reminder, when we are looking at how to choose the best possible works for Manitou Springs as part of this visiting installation, what we do is look at both risk mitigation and public space activation. Those are key elements. So each one of these visiting works that we're recommending has been carefully vetted. The art committee looks at things like weather, durability, hail damage is something that we hope to mitigate. So these particular works are well suited for not just the particular sites that we're recommending, but also for our particular microclimate. They look at the structural integrity, how well it's built. They also look at the visual appeal. So how well is it constructed? How much will it bring to that space? What will it do for our community and our visitors? I'll also mention that as part of that public art survey that just closed, we heard that 70% of the respondents, and that was over 200 folks who wanted us to know that yes, 70% say art strongly does improve their quality of life. And 76% would also like us to know that they want to see more of it. So then I do want to make sure that we have time to talk more, not just about who is making these decisions, but also about how we work on the installation. So you may remember we have a fairly detailed list that looks at everything that we do to bring in these visiting works. I was surprised as part of the research process to note just how much work it takes. We knew it was a great deal of work. Now we have an entire chart, which is, I don't think, part of the presentation. But essentially what we're saying is that the cost that we're looking at annually, and I think that was page 142 of your council packet, this is just for Art on the Avenue. These are just visiting works. And so what we do as part of our private and public partnership with the city is we provide the catalog tracking, we work on public awareness, we offer those small repairs up to $999.99, at which point, should the repairs cost more, we would turn it over to the city's SURSA policy to handle. We also cover the cost of any materials or artist time that we might need to fund. And we do all of this often through private donations. So since 1997, this group of volunteers has been doing incredible work to make sure that the city of Manitou Springs has awesome public art and the kind of public art that stands the test of time. So in addition to repairs, we also partner with the city. So thank you to the city for paying that $315 a year that makes larger repairs possible. And then you will note that up to now, the city has not paid the salary. So that's a $0 sum. But we also handle things like calls for artists, public engagement, volunteer coordination, the selection process itself, artist and juror outreach, installation, signage, payments to the artist, and then finally removal. So those are quite a number of steps. It takes a great deal of work, and I did want to reflect that. Okay, so going back to the presentation, the fun stuff. Essentially what we're looking at are 3 different works. The first one is Spiral Dance by Harold Link. It's a beautiful sculpture, and we're hoping to install that in 7 Minute Spring Park. If we could advance, that would be awesome. There we go. So we think that would be a playful and very fun fit to the park. We're also looking at the next slide, please, would be Magnify by Kirk Cease. We had proposed this near Soda Springs Park. We think we have a better place over by Shoshone Spring Park. It is interactive. That's a place where people like to have their lunches, their coffees. They take their kids there to enjoy the spring. This is a work that is made to be focused. So you can collect the sunbeams and it's kind of fun. And then finally, Germination by Gregory Fields in that last slide. And this is just a beautiful pier of sorts. And that would be over in Cheyenne Spring Pocket Park.
Council, we have questions for Becca or for Ralph? Could you go back to the previous slide there? The viewer swivels the rings to position so it moves. Is that it?
Right. It's somehow evocative of a gyroscope. So there are different rings that allow it to swivel in different ways. And then, of course, it is made to be turned toward the sun. So as we know, the sun changes how art looks during the course of time. This particular piece is made to be moved around so that it can magnify and focus just colored light. So it kind of changes the space around it and would add some visual interest to the pedestal in the park.
Okay, so you're pretty comfortable with the safety? You feel there's no hazard to the user? Okay.
Yeah.
Council members, questions, comments? Well, okay, so we're being asked to basically consent to the installation of these 3 art pieces. So we can entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we consent to recommendations for visiting installations at no additional cost to the city.
Motion second. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
They look really cool, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item. Next item is approval of resolution number 1622, a resolution approving and adopting the 5th amended and restated establishing intergovernmental agreement for the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. And since I'm the city's representative on that, I'll try to explain this a little bit. We had talked towards the end of last year about the town of Callahan wanting to join PPRTA, and we had approved that as a council member. The admission for new members has to be approved by all of the participating members. So now PPRTA consists of El Paso County, Colorado Springs, City of Manitou, Rama, Green Mountain Falls, and Callahan. So there's some wording that's been changed to reflect that. There's some additional language which the board felt would clarify things for the voters. This is coming up in the November election. There'll be the voters will be asked to renew PPRTA. So there's some cleanup language there. There's something. Let's see. This is needed for the extension of PPRTA's 55% capital project sales and use tax. More specifically, there's a 1 cent sales tax that we and the participating governments collect. 55% of that goes for capital projects, and that's beneficial to the city of Manitou Springs. I think probably you're reasonably familiar with this, so maybe I can just answer questions if you have any. Yeah, Julie?
Well, I seem to recall there was some discussion on how to handle the voting rights on that board. How did that end up?
Right. So okay. So the way that worked, okay, you can imagine that Okay, the way it was structured was, and this is the way it was set up. El Paso County has 3 votes. They have 3 members who come down and sit through those 3 commissioners. The city of Colorado Springs has 3, so they send 3 city council people. And then the rest of us, which is, well, no, it had been that the Green Mountain Falls, Rama, and Manitou each had a vote. So there were 9 votes cast, and usually things were a pretty sizable majority. With the addition of Calhan, we had the problem, do we want to add another county commissioner, another city council person from Colorado Springs, which suddenly would grow on the board immensely, it becomes unmanageable. So the way we've done that is El Paso County will get 3 votes, Colorado Springs will get 3 votes, and everybody else gets a total of 3 votes. So we have to divide those 3 up. So no, currently we get 0.75 of a vote. So, but what has happened, the mayors of the small communities, now we all sit together and try to intimidate the rest.
So everybody votes, but they get a 0.75 vote as to
Yeah.
the 3 remaining tiny
Yeah.
towns. And then you average it out and that's how much
We take the vote,
those
yeah.
3.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see.
And I mean, we
That was clever.
tried a lot of different strategies trying to be fair, but you can see the real problem is that as you scale up, you have to basically, you'd have all the county commissioners there, all the Colorado Springs council people, so that was unmanageable. So that was a pragmatic decision. A lot of our decisions are still, everybody gets 1 vote. This is only applied in certain cases. But I will mention that of the money is, the capital money is prorated by population. So we're 0.7% of the population, which is still pretty significant because they have like $200 million in reserves. So we get we get a nice chunk. So I'd recommend that we would approve this. I will mention that it has to be approved by a 2/3 majority. So any additional questions? So moved, okay. And I see a thumbs up from Nancy. So a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Motion passes 6-0. So this will allow PPRTA to push forward. Okay. Receive or act on council correspondence. Jill, you'd expressed a concern about a fire question. Chief has stayed here patiently, so perhaps. we can
Oh,
start
that'd be
with that.
awesome. Thank you so much, Chief. I'm
Chief, thank you.
sorry you had to wait. I just want to know what all we can do, not only primarily from a fire safety perspective, but also in terms of kids and potential homeless people and other potential intruders. I remember when we had that house burned down right across from the elementary school.
Yep.
There was a lot of good stuff that was eventually done to try and protect the public from going in. I don't know if these utilities are still on there at that property. The fact that, people can just wander in, it just really concerned me. And I wanted to know if you can throw out suggestions on what we can do to protect the public as well as the
Yeah.
fire concerns.
So somewhat, you're right. Pawnee Avenue, same story, different verse, same song, different verse. And we did do a lot of good things back then, especially in Denise's world, to give her some options when it comes to managing dangerous buildings, those kinds of things. While we were sitting here at the meeting, I was educating myself on its current state right now and had one of my folks run up there and take a look at it. As you know, this home has history. You've seen the history as it pertains to the fire hydrant and the remodel and the demolition and all of those things. So there is backstory to all of those pieces. As it stands currently, though, there are no utilities present. The gas meter's gone, the electric meter's gone. So it wouldn't be in the fire department's world to declare it a fire safety hazard. Couple of things. One, there's no ignition source. It's not full of a whole bunch of stuff that would be concerned. It is wide open. The doors are open, the windows are open, but currently there's not any evidence of presence of like homeless activity, people staying there, that kind of thing. We do have already planned for tomorrow because we knew this was coming up, not in the meeting. We knew that there was a concern out there. So tomorrow it's already scheduled for our fire inspector along with our code inspector, along with our planning director, to meet up there at that location and investigate what we can do about the concerns. But more importantly, about its openness. It's readily available for folks to just walk in. So probably what that means, first off, without speaking with a contractor and those kinds of things, is we could have the ability on our onus to go up there and board it up and make sure it's safe in that manner. So that's something that can probably happen right away. Aside from that, it is important, though, that we do follow, we learned this very in great detail with Jeff with the Pawnee House, that we need to follow steps and do things correctly if we're going to go down a path of taking on some of that ownership for the problems. But as they pertain to fire right now, I can't tell you that I couldn't, as your fire chief, declare that as a dangerous fire safety hazard today.
So likewise, at the Pawnee location, there was no, I'm sure they had no, the gas and the electricity were both turned off.
Yep.
And we nonetheless determined that it was essential to fence the property off for protection. But first,
Right.
and I forget the details, but first we had to do some kind of cease and desist thing. And, Jeff Parker did, and Denise did all that stuff. Is that going to be done for this property? Because
Well, the best,
I don't see what if we took care of protecting the other there may not be any fire danger now, but as soon as
Right.
we get a couple of these homeless camps figuring out that there's some nice shelter there and they set up their propane and all their stuff, man, I don't want to find out about it at 2 a.m. when I'm told to evacuate. So I just didn't know. It sounds like maybe I shouldn't be asking you this question. Maybe this is really a question for Denise, but
Yeah.
I want to know if we're going to proceed the way we did on Pawnee to hopefully swiftly secure the property and then put a lien against the property to be compensated ultimately.
and real quick, I'm giving you the fire department's perspective as I am known of it right now in its current state. That being said, I think Denise certainly can speak to her end of how to manage after this, but certainly a perspective of how she is able to proceed will come to light tomorrow after code and fire and planning all get together to see how we can manage this forward. And I certainly let her speak to that.
You have comments?
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, I can give a couple. One is, this is an HPC, so it's a historical preservation area. So we did get approval. They had to approve the demolition of it, and they did approve it on August 4th, 2021. So it is approved right now. They were demolishing it, and then they didn't have any of the permits. So we had to stop that, right? And because they didn't have any of the permits from regional. And so we had to do a cease and desist because there were no permits for the demolition, which we want to make sure happens for all safety issues as we go forward. So then it came through, there was perceived inaccurate information given to them previously. So we're trying to rebuild those communications now with the owner. And tomorrow they're going to go up and look at it. If they believe that it's imminent danger, we have two things. Is I can then as city manager say, we're going to board it up immediately. We incur the cost, we do everything. Or I can say it's not imminent danger and give them 5 days to board it up. And then if they don't board it up, but then I have to declare it a nuisance. Either myself or the planning director has to declare it a nuisance. So we're going through this. We're just like we did Pawnee. We're working through the process. What can we do? What are the legal implications? Bringing Jeff in. I mentioned in an email today, we also, if you go by LaFun, there's some issues there that we're working on. So there are numerous issues that we are trying to manage and trying to get them handled as quickly as possible. But there are legal implications and we need to make sure we follow the process.
And I missed one thing you said. Did you say it was Regional Building who's going down with you tomorrow to evaluate?
No, it is
Who's
our
going with
code
you?
enforcement.
Oh, okay.
It's
what Chief
planning.
said. Okay.
And then it's fire. And we may have to get a builder to come in and really say that this is dangerous, right? So we have to be very careful as we go through this. So we're going to make sure we follow the process. We're going to make sure that we have the right things in place. and we'll go through it one step at a time as we go forward.
So is part of that just assessment you'll be doing tomorrow? Does that include looking at things like whether the floorboards are going to fall through or, all of that?
They will look at that, yes. They'll look at it. Now, they may not, if we don't have, we may have to bring somebody in who has a, what is it called? Chief, all of a sudden I forgot, a building engineer to come and declare it. Yeah.
And is regional involved then, or where's regional on this?
They're not involved at this time. They will not declare, they rarely declare a building dangerous. So it's really up to us at this point to decide. And as we go forward, you guys, I think, you know that from previous experiences and previous conversations that we've had in executive session.
Okay. Well, I would think at a minimum, it would be safer to board it up than to leave it all open the way it is. I mean, not coming from an expert point of view, but just common sense. You don't want, I don't want homeless people hanging in there and kids going in after, work to hang out and do whatever. I just hope that we see something happen to it right away. So I really appreciate that you're jumping right on it because it's been that way for a bit. Will you be also monitoring that daily until it does get boarded up, just to make sure that we're not relying on neighbors to keep report or?
Well, yeah, exactly. The monitoring of it wouldn't fall upon the fire department. It would fall more in the code enforcement world to make sure that we're fixing it in that manner. But if this does become the ownership of the city to do the boarding up, then that would be something I imagine is going to happen right away, and we're going to manage that.
Or maybe that would be more of a police function, I suppose. I don't know that code enforcement's in charge of making sure that people aren't hanging out in the building. That's not
Well, if
their.
you get to that point, but referring to your boarding up, we're ensuring
Right.
that it's being taken care of. So they are.
Thank you so much for staying to talk about this. I'm very worried about it, and I appreciate your helping us with the information.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Julie, do you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Other council members? I think Nancy had her hand up first and then Judith.
Thank you. Two things I went to the Housing Advisory Board meeting and they are very excited. They are working very closely with staff, the new planning staff, which is wonderful. And they'll be implementing, hopefully within the next month, a energy efficiency and water efficiency rebate program using the budget that they have. So that's pretty darn exciting. And also went to the URA and they got only one bid for the bathrooms at Fields Park. So that was most unfortunate and kind of wondering why that happened. Anyway, and also the bid that did come in was way over what the estimate was. So they've decided that they should wait and rebid it in the fall, and hopefully prices may come down at that point as well. So that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Judith?
Thank you. I have a few things. First, I would like to really express my gratitude for being able to attend the 100th Colorado Municipal League Conference. It was my first time attending with a number of council members and the city administrator, and I learned a great deal, and the networking was amazing. So I just, again, thank you to the city of Manitou for sending us to the conference, and I really encourage other council members, if they can go next year, to go. It was really a wonderful experience. Following the day after I got back was the Pollinator Festival. I want a big shout out. It was a tremendous success. Last year there were 6 tables. This year there were 20. The Tenderfoot Bluegrass Band played. The Puppet Parade was so well received that I got feedback that we need to make this a downtown, close off the street, full parade. And I know I'm going to forget some people, but we are well on our way to becoming the first certified pollinator district in the state of Colorado. And so shout out to certainly Becca Sickbird, who's in the room, Melody Doherty, Mary Ellen Montgomery, Joan and Carl Stang. I mean, so many people that put Allie Such from the Fountain Creek Watershed for putting this together. It was really something. I was so pleased. I have had many compliments on the art at the Old Man's Trail bus stop. It is just, I mean, I'm getting so much feedback. So a great shout out for that is just absolutely beautiful. I see I did attend OSAC last night and they were all thrilled because we have a full board there, including our alternates. So we have a full board and glad to be working with Skylar and Seth. And lastly, I do want to mention that last Friday, the Supreme Court made a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade and overturn almost 50 years of settled law from 1973. And it was a very dark day for me. However, I am grateful that I live in the state of Colorado. And on April 4th, 2022, Governor Jared Polis signed into law House Bill 22-1279, codifying a person's fundamental right to make reproductive health care decisions free from government interference. And I would like to propose that I bring a proclamation to City Council that supporting House Bill 22-1279. We missed Women's Reproductive Health Week. That was May 8th through the 14th when President Joseph R. Biden declared Women's Health Reproductive Week in May. And at that time was very concerned about women's reproductive rights and rights in general. So I'm putting this out to council to see if there is consensus to bring a proclamation supporting Jared Polis signing the bill. I did email the governor's office today suggesting that perhaps next year in June, third week of June 2023, we declare a state week, Women's Reproductive Health Rights Week. Hasn't gotten back to me yet. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Just one comment on that, Judith. I'm wondering if a resolution might not be a better approach than the proclamation. It's perhaps a matter of nuance, but that's would be a consideration. Yeah, I guess we could just kind of take a quick, I see a yes here, I see a yes. Okay, so 3 yeses. Okay. All right. Judith, would you like to prepare a draft of the resolution?
Prepare drafts and send it to council.
The council. Maybe you should send the first one to Denise for review, or how do you want to do that, Denise?
Why don't you go ahead and send it to the city clerk? She looks at all those.
Okay.
If Jeff needs to look at them, so let's have
Okay.
Judy go ahead and manage it, and then we can get it on the agenda accordingly.
Okay, so Judy, you'll be our filter on that, okay? Thank you. If you'll take care of that, Judith, good. Anybody else? Okay, well, I've got have a certificate of achievement here for Counselor Michelle Witherholt. This acknowledges. I'm going to pass this around so you can see the photo here. They're small, but you definitely see Michelle. So this was up last week. I think it was Thursday morning at CML in Breckenridge at an altitude of, I think, 9,600 feet. Michelle finished third place in the Colorado Municipal League's 5K Fun Run Women's Division. She not only made the run, but she found her way back, which is a good thing. So you represented the city well, and we appreciate that. Let everybody look at it before I present it to you. Yes, you can, but one thing before that, and this is a button that Judith put together. So Judith, perhaps you would like to pin that on her.
She said there were only 3 hills at the race. I think anybody that ran 3 hills at over 9,000 square feet deserves to have a ribbon.
They've seen it.
I was there. You should present it.
Okay, I will. Yeah, okay, all right, great, okay, so, okay, well, very good, okay. Michelle, congratulations.
Let me get the girl's name. Oh, okay, hang on, let me find her name.
That's good. No, I'm fine, yeah, no worries.
The mayor's trying to present you your certificate.
Oh, my
Go ahead, you can go ahead and do that first. It's-
Okay, I just want to say, so we have a picture now. I can get it to Alex. But as we were starting out, there was a gal that took off. Her name is Ashley. She's in Golden. and she's on an works for an environmental company. And then as I was like watching her just take off in front of all the men, and I'm like, oh, cool, I could be like second female. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this chick is like on a roll. And so I was telling my friend, and she's like, oh yeah, that's Ashley so-and-so, and she's represented by Hoka, and she's a pro athlete. And sure enough, I looked her up, and she went to the Olympic trials. And so yes, so thank you for recognizing me.
All the more when you had that kind of competition. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for representing the city. Okay. Great.
Oh, are we doing a photo?
Do a photo, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure I'll take one and then give it to Alex.
Okay.
Let me take a quick photo here on this page.
Sure. Okay.
Wait, I need
Oh,
your,
my-
yeah, there we
my
go.
button.
There we go.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, Ashley was ahead of the rest of the field by probably 10 minutes.
Oh,
It was amazing.
But Manitou Springs City Council members were the only one there taking pictures. And we had these two, so I think it was Natalie and Nancy were the ones that got, I don't know, whoever, 100 people, I don't even know.
We just started
They were
directing
They were
everything.
directing the show.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Oh, Sherry, Michelle.
So thank you, City of Manitou Springs, for allowing me to go to this conference. On the last day, on Friday, one of the workshops that I went to was on diversity. And I just want everyone to know that I did tell everyone there. So this conference, mayors, city council members, city administrators, city attorneys were all represented. Granted, not every city or town was represented, and not everybody from all of council or whatnot. But I did mention that I was of the 1% that was non-white. I was probably the only Asian person there, and a handful of Black people, and let me see, Latin American. And so in that workshop, I did learn about how we need to reach out to various communities, and it wasn't just about race. So just so you know, when I made my statement to push for 5%, I meant everything that had to do with diversity, from race, age, LGBTQIA, and all the things, people with disabilities. So I just want you to know, while I'm on city council and in 2027 or whatever, if I decide not to run again, my push for government as a whole for Colorado is to see people with all the things. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Correspondence? Okay, I guess I would add too that I was overall pleased with the CML conference. There were 3, maybe 4 of the sessions I thought were valuable and useful. There were 2 that were pretty bland, but overall it was good. I think it was good for us to get out and meet some of our peers from other jurisdictions. An awful lot of the problems that we have that seem unique to Manitou, they come in slightly different flavors elsewhere. Oftentimes not a whole lot of difference. With that, I do have a little bit of business that's unpleasant, and that's, I kind of wish Mr. Shader were here. I tried to talk to him this afternoon. And that goes back to the business. I want to remind council that individual members of city council have no authority to direct staff. And in fact, this was something that was discussed in one of the sessions I had at CML. So this isn't unique to Manitou, it's a statewide rule. And to demand to do so, to direct staff as an individual council person flies in the face of the law. I think of reasonable management principles and of common courtesy. We've been down this road before. We seem to forget and we get lost despite clear directions from our attorney. I could say that council should move towards a policy whereby we ask and expect city staff to provide information within a reasonable time period given their other duties. This necessarily varies with the complexity of the task and the workload elsewhere required. Sometimes councils do this, sometimes we forget. In theory, we can discuss having a better process for getting information to counselors. Unless counselors harbor expectations that align with reality and respect, this is pointless. Council members should think about what life looks like to city employees and realize they often have their hands full with day-to-day duties. Hang out in City Hall for a few days and you'll see that most days are filled with challenges. Demanding, belligerent, and unreasonable orders set a tone of disrespect. They demonstrate contempt and disregard. They do not appeal to anyone's better angels. This is childish, ineffective, and damaging to the function and effectiveness of government. Get over it. With that, do we have anything from the city administrator? Sure.
So if there's a situation, if there is an emergency situation, should the counselor go to you, John, or should they contact Denise? What would you like the policy to be?
You know, I think we can, I think what we need to do is try and be reasonable. If it's an emergency, we want to get the matter resolved. Okay. I mean, and certainly, I mean, we're all tasked with taking care of the public. That's what they expect. That's what I think we all want to do. If it's truly an emergency, and again, this is sometimes a matter of perception. So I'm appealing to your better angels. Okay. I think it's best to go to Denise. She's the one that's actually going to direct city staff and explain the situation thoroughly. If it's really an emergency, then I think city staff, and that basically Denise and department heads, are going to mobilize and do the right thing. I think our fire department, our police department are pretty well set up for this. And when we say pretty well, when it gets to be a real emergency, we find how, you know, if there's any flaws in our system, and I really feel like we need to be robust and active, and especially with the danger of fire. So I would hope that we can kind of temper our thinking with a sense of urgency.
It was
So
helpful. I was just
I don't mean to
curious.
waffle, but there's a lot of different circumstances. And I mean, if it's really an emergency, but the other thing is, remember that when we have emergencies, we always have, it seems like we have more than one. If you're at City Hall, not every day, but sometimes things become urgent, and there's multiple things that people have to attend to quickly. So maybe we can get to it real quickly. Sometimes in the great scope of things, it's going to have to wait a little bit.
Thank you.
If you'd like to follow on.
I just want to say is I will always try to respond and get things done. And that's I want you to know that I'm here to do it. I can't always get it done when requested and as quickly. And maybe the thing is, through this correspondence, you had questions, which was great. We can address those or put them on the agenda. As you know, this week we've had a couple, right? The bear one and trash issues. We're really managing that, which is taking a lot of time and energy as we go forward. So we're trying to manage, we're trying to hear and listen and do. And we're just working on a lot of items right now as we go forward. And this week is a little bit more challenging because we have more people on vacation, right? And that happens during the summertime. So just know that we're here, and I think a process, if there's any type of process, that would be great, because then we can just work through it and make sure that I meet you guys' needs and be able to address what you're requesting. I can't always do it, and I'm in meetings when something happens, but I always try to work with you. But with that, I would like to give my report.
Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
So I did attend the pollinator the last minute because I had something else, and I agree, it was a huge success. More people and just a great. I also attended the Pride Fest, which was also great. Well attended there too. I don't know anybody else, but it was great. The conference, I agree, lots of information. I do want to share that. I asked Jeff to reach out to the Public Works Director at Littleton, because I know Public Works did a lot with sustainability, and just to start that conversation to see what that could be. And I don't know, we'll bring something back, but I just asked him to start the conversation and see what they've done from really getting the sustainability. Friday is Movie at the Park at Memorial Park. So it's, I believe it's Sing 2. So it's our second movie at the park. The last one, about 40 people attended. So we'll see where we are. I hate to say, I don't want to say no rain. I would rather have the rain, but we'll see what happens as we move forward. June 29th is the second neighborhood chipping. It's still up at Crystal Hills, because that's always for what our says.
so it's still there. And I don't want to give the exact date, but it looks like we're gonna have another chipping day at Public Works. So as soon as we get that date and everything secured, we'll announce that so people can bring it there. And I will tell you, the neighborhood chipping program is a huge success. So what we thought would take 1 day of staff's time is taking 3 to 4 days. So then it moves everything else back that we have in our work plan. But a huge, huge success. And I do want to announce that. I do want to remind you, we're, I think, 5th right now in the best small town art. And we're the only one in Colorado that's for that. So please get online and vote. I think we have 3 more days for voting. It would be great if we could move that up to the top 1 maybe. So you can vote as many times. It's just once a day to vote. Well, yeah, but you have to get nominated and there's a big process to hit the top 20. So this is a very big thing for our community. So please vote often. How they vote to vote? How to vote. It's online and is it on our website? I can't remember.
You can also go to USA Today Top 10 and look it
Thank
up
you.
there.
There you go.
Put your short link in tiny.cc/vote for managed events.
So
That'll take you
we will
directly,
make
yeah.
sure, I think we posted it a couple of times on Facebook, but we can do that again and I can send it to all of council if you want to forward it on. I can have Alex send it to all of you and if you would like to forward it on to people, that would be great. And vote often. Let's see real quick if I have any others. I think that's all I have with everything at this point. So.
If there are no questions, I'd like to explain a little bit about the rest of the meeting. We have on our agenda, we have an executive session, and then after that, we anticipate we'll come back to regular public session with the thought that maybe we will need to take formal action on what we discuss in executive session. So I propose I'd like to go ahead and bring this forward, get a motion and approval to go into executive session. And I think we'll take a 10-minute break. If nobody has an objection to that. So an executive session, this is an executive session pursuant to section 5.1B of the Manitou Springs Home Rule Charter concerning a First Amendment to a purchase and sale agreement for property owned by the city and the Janes family adjacent to Volmore Road in El Paso County.
I move to move into executive session after a 10-minute.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, great. We'll
Mayor, may I ask that both Judy and Elena stay in because afterwards we go back and we don't have everything here and it should only be 5
Right,
minutes.
yes.
Is that okay that they stay in for the executive
I think that would be fine. Yeah, we,
Okay.
okay, that would be fine then. Okay, great.
So do you want to stay?
Ellen, thanks. It's going to be exciting.
Not.
I was
Okay.
there, yeah.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
it was-
great.
He heard it just.